This is it, the first and probably the last time I'll ever share this story in its entirety. It happened nearly 6 years ago, but even now, it feels like it's still happening. I'm going to be as detailed as I can because I need you to understand how real this felt, but I warn you, it does get pretty disturbing. Before I dive into what happened, I need to tell you about my old friend Brian. We'd known each other since junior kindergarten. We were inseparable for years, but everything changed after, well, you'll see. Brian had a rough life, always in trouble, always trying to escape it. His childhood was a mess. He'd tell us about it like it was a bad memory he couldn't shake. He leaned on substances to cope, especially when things got too heavy. But there was something else about Brian. A story he would tell over and over again. A story that stuck with him, and eventually stuck with us too. He said it came from his great-grandfather, a photographer during World War II. According to Brian, his great-grandfather's plane went down during a mission, and they were stranded for days in the wilderness. As food ran out, the crew was forced to do unspeakable things to survive. Brian's story always left one question unanswered. Did they kill the man they ate, or did he die in the crash? The story became a centerpiece of Brian's mental state. He'd bring it up constantly, how his great-grandfather had visions of what happened, dreams that felt too real, like he was right there, watching it unfold. He said it felt as though he was being lured away from reality. Brian told us those dreams weren't just dreams. He said they haunted him as well, and every time he woke up, it felt like he was losing himself, losing his grip on reality. He even called it a curse, something that had been passed down through his family, generation to generation. And that's when the Wendigo started to come up, not just in passing, but constantly. That year, a group of us, Mike, Katie, Brian, and V, did something we had all been talking about for years. We took a hike to one of the largest abandoned towns in North America, planning on camping out and exploring it. We decided to go in late February. The air was freezing, the trees were bare and twisted. Their skeletal branches added to the spooky vibe of our excursion. We'd spend the day hiking through the woods, reach the town by evening, explore for a while, and camp out overnight before heading back the next day. We'd been hiking for hours, the trees thinning out as we made our way through the dense woods. Of course, Brian rambled on about the same story, mentioning wendigos a few times. We were all pretty used to this and mostly ignored him. However, because of the setting, being out in the woods, I'll admit, it creeped us out a bit. It did me at least. Finally, we emerged. The trees opened up, and for the first time all day, we saw the town. At first, I couldn't believe it was real. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. The town lay ahead of us, just beyond the tree line, crumbling and seemingly untouched by anyone for many, many years. It looked and felt like a different world, something out of a video game. The buildings towered against the pale, dying light of the afternoon. Most of them were industrial, tall, hulking warehouses and factories. Their windows shattered, their once pristine metal walls now rusted and peeling. The roads that led into it were choked with weeds, cracking pavement barely visible beneath the weeds growing through it. We all stood there in amazement for a few seconds, not saying anything. V broke the silence and said, "We should find somewhere to set up our tents." We were all tired, soaked from the rain, and I swear I could hear every step echo as we moved through the streets. We needed to get out of the wet, so we found a factory on the edge of town. No exterior wall on the eastern-facing side, but the roof still covered the second floor. It was actually a cool spot, just a massive empty concrete floor. The missing side of the building gave us a really cool view of the rest of the town and a large field. I assume it used to be a farm field or something. We set up our tent on the concrete floor, all close together, but Brian didn't help. He got quiet and just kind of blankly stared over the town. I figured he was just in amazement at this place like the rest of us. We still had a couple hours of daylight after we finished setting up, so we decided to go explore some of the other buildings. But Brian said he was tired and stayed behind. This was a bit out of character for him, but we did just finish a really long hike, so I didn't want to dwell on it. The rest of us spent the next hour or so exploring the other buildings. Most of them were almost completely destroyed, missing roofs and most of the walls. Just foundations stood, more or less. The sun started to set, but as we turned around to head back, I swear I saw Brian crouched down with his head peeking out from behind a small half wall. "Brian," I yelled, but no answer. "Well, at least he's started to have fun," Katie chuckled. I nodded, but something in my gut felt off. We returned to our little site on the second floor, and Brian was there, sitting cross-legged, writing in his journal. He did this from time to time. I think it was suggested by his therapist or something. "Hey, man," I said, "were you out there walking around?" "No, I don't think so," is all he said, without even looking up. "Guess he's in a pissy mood," V whispered to me. After hanging out for a bit, we all got in our tents and went to sleep. But a few hours later, I woke up to a faint whispering chatter. I quietly unzipped the corner of my tent door and peered out. There was Brian, still sitting cross-legged in the same spot, writing in his journal. I could only see him slightly with the moonlight coming in, but honestly, I have no idea how he had enough light to see what he was writing. He was muttering things that I could barely make out. Then, suddenly, clearly, he just said, "The hunger never stops." As soon as he said this, he stopped writing and looked up, directly at V's tent. Now, the moonlight illuminated his face enough for me to see. My stomach sank as I noticed a dead expression on his face. But what's worse was the long strings of drool pouring out of his mouth. I know most people in this situation would probably lose their mind, but this was Brian. He was weird. Always had been. Me and the rest of the group were kinda used to it. I'll admit though, this was strange even for him. Feeling uneasy, I quietly zipped the corner of my tent and went back to sleep. I woke up to a faint morning light in my tent. I was already sweating in my sleeping bag. It was obvious that today was going to be much warmer than the previous day. Exciting and perfect for exploring. I stepped out to the bright sunbeams illuminating our area with a beautiful orange glow. Just half the sun crested the horizon. Then, Katie's tent unzipped and she stepped out. "Morning," I said, groggily. "Morning." Thankfully, Brian was no longer sitting outside of his tent. "We should wake them up before breakfast," she said. I bent down and unzipped V's tent, but she wasn't inside. Then I walked over to Brian's tent, but same thing, he was nowhere to be found. Only his journal and a granola bar wrapping were inside. I couldn't help myself. I grabbed the journal and stepped back outside of the tent. "They must have gone for a walk," I said to Katie as I opened the book. She looked over at me, saw what I was doing, and just sighed and rolled her eyes. "Okay, I'll make us oatmeal and then we'll go look for them if they're still not back." I flipped through the pages, but the further I got, the more illegible the writing got. It almost turned into scribbles. On the last page, scribbled hundreds of times, there were words. Hunger and never stops. Must eat. Below that was a rough sketch of what looked like a person, with missing arms, legs, and blood everywhere. I leaned over and showed Katie. "Oh, what the hell? Fucking weirdo," she said. We decided to leave breakfast for now and went to look for them. We walked among the crumbling foundations and yelled, but got no reply. Then, a loud dong sound, like metal hitting concrete, echoed from one of the buildings that was still standing. "Well, that's creepy," Katie said. We hesitantly walked inside and heard the noise again, this time much louder. It was echoing from down a concrete stairwell that led into complete blackness. "V, Brian," we called out, but no answer. We descended further down. We started to hear something. At the time, I couldn't figure out what it was. It sounded like grunting, mixed with heavy breathing. I looked over at Katie. We gave each other a wide-eyed, freaked-out look. The sound was now only feet in front of us. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The image I saw, I'll never be able to get out of my head. There was Brian, hunched over on his knees, turned away from us, completely naked. He was eating something, ravenously like a wild animal, grunting. I lowered my phone flashlight toward the ground to see what was on the floor in front of him. This part is really hard to talk about, but it was V. She was covered in blood and had chunks of flesh missing. She was clearly not alive anymore. I think our bodies took over because Katie and I immediately turned around and sprinted up the stairs. "We need to leave," I yelled as we ran. Hey everyone, during the last video I set a goal to reach 50 subscribers by the end of March, and thanks to you all we did it. It wasn't a huge goal, but it's actually a pretty good accomplishment for the size of this channel, so thank you so much. I'd like to set a new goal of hitting 100 subs by the end of April. So if you're enjoying the content and you want to see more, please subscribe and drop a like on this video to help hit the goal. Thanks again, and let's get back to the video. We didn't bother grabbing our stuff. We just bolted into the woods, the same way we came in. On pure adrenaline, we ran for probably 20 minutes until we stopped, gasping for air. We stood under a massive oak tree in a small clearing, trying to catch our breath as I checked my phone's compass to make sure we were heading in the right direction. We didn't say anything to each other. We just stared at each other's wide eyes. As soon as I slid my phone back in my pocket to continue running, a flash from the tree line. Someone running, very fast, naked. It was Brian. We never stopped moving for the next 2 hours. When we weren't running, we were walking. Finally, we emerged onto a highway and the service on my phone was restored. I dialed 911. The police never found Brian, but they did manage to recover V's body, or what was left of it. Later, we found out that Brian's therapist had actually notified the police, as she believed he could be a danger to other people or himself. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. Sometimes when I'm outside, I swear I see Brian, sprinting through the woods, out of the corner of my eye, naked. But that's probably all in my head.